Space is the commanding height. The expanse beyond borders, essential for deterrence and defense. Superiority is critical. Expanding the network of allied nations is key. We are partnering to win. Strengthening relationships with allies and partners is crucial to maintaining a secure, safe, and sustainable space environment. The four nations of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, the Quad, is focusing on sharing information that brings situational awareness, mutual support, and technological innovation to the space enterprise. Join us on Wednesday, 19th of July, for an online discussion among the four space commanders from Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. Commanding heights, setting the stage for international cooperation.
Today, we're going to discuss the Quad military cooperation with defense industry. And I just want to say a special thanks to the entire International Security Industry Council, or ISIC, Japan team, and to the sponsors of today's events. Without our sponsors supporting non-government entities like ours, it's impossible to host events like these. So thank you to the sponsors for today's events. We all know the threats that exist from our potential adversaries to prevent freedom of action in the space domain, which means strengthening relationships with allies and partners is crucial to maintaining a secure, safe, and sustainable space environment. As the United States has shown, commercial space companies are vital for national defense. The power of public-private collaboration has accelerated technological advances across the spectrum. This is inspiring national space agencies to work with private sectors and partner nations of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue in Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. The Quad is evolving into a platform for mutual security supported by a series of foundational defense agreements. At the first in-person summit in September 2021, cooperation in space was adopted and reinforced in subsequent summits in 2022 and 2023. This webinar will explore private sector support from our four national security perspectives. The central question is, how can space forces of like-minded countries and their commercial partners learn from each other? I suspect during the discussion, training and exercise engagement is going to be critical for each of the countries represented here, and the importance of the different procedures that we learn from those exercises, plus the personal relationships that are developed from continuous engagement. Please allow me to introduce each of our panelists. Lieutenant General Philip A. Garant is the Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Strategy, Plans, Programs, and Requirements, United States Space Force, the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. As the Chief Strategy and Resourcing Officer, Lieutenant General Garant has overall responsibility for the strategies, requirements, and budget of the United States Space Force. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today. Let me also introduce Air Vice Marshal Anil Galani, retired, Additional Director General, Center for Air Power Studies in New Delhi, CAPS. And congratulations to India for their latest launch to the moon and for the roadmap for the defense engagement strategy. And recently, India just signed the Artemis Accords as the 5th largest economy in the world. Air Vice Marshal Galani is a qualified flying instructor and an instrument rating instructor and examiner, commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in December 1982. Fully ops on the erstwhile Ajit and Jaguar aircraft, raised and commanded the 1st Harpy Squadron of the Indian Air Force, commanded an Air Defense Direction Center and an operational base. He has done the staff course, Higher Air Command course and a year's course in International Security and Strategy at the Royal College of Defence Studies, London. He was superannuated from service in November of 2019. Sir, thanks so much for being with us today. I'd like to also introduce Major General Sakanashi Hiroaki. He is the Director General, Defense Planning and Policy Department, or A5, 6, and 8, Air Staff Office, Kokojete, Japan Air Self-Defense Force. He leads defense plans and programs of the Kokojete to include defense cooperation and exchange, weapon system programs, space security, cybersecurity, C4 systems, civil engineering, and F-35 program. Sir, thanks for being with us this morning. And finally, I'd like to welcome Brigadier Chris Gardner, DSM, Director General, Space Operations, Coordination Defense Space Command, Joint Capabilities Office, Australian Defense Force. Brigadier Gardner was able to attend the 2022 U.S. Spacecom International Commanders meeting last May. Brigadier Christopher Gardner, DSM, is the inaugural Director General, Space Operations Coordination, Defense Space Command. Brigadier Gardner entered the Australian Defense Force in 1995, serving his formative years as an armored officer in both junior command and training roles. He has undertaken a range of postings throughout his career, spanning training, staff, and command positions. He's a graduate of the Joint Advanced Warfare School in Norfolk, Virginia, and the Australian Command and Staff College. Sir, thanks for being with us today. And I'd like to just say thanks again to everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules from around the globe to discuss how each country is integrating and interacting with the commercial sector. Let's get started by talking and listening to Lieutenant General Durant. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, and thank you to the Space Force Association, Colonel Wolf, the International Security Council of Japan, and to Brigadier Gardner, Air Vice Marshal Golani, and Major General Sakanashi for joining me on this virtual panel. It is an honor to participate in this event. The Quad partnership between India, Japan, Australia, and the United States contributes to a free, open, inclusive, and resilient Indo-Pacific region. There is great potential to incorporate space commercial collaboration to bolster the Quad and our respective economies. We have seen during Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine just how important commercial space capabilities are during a contingency. My team is developing the first United States Space Force commercial strategy, which will be released within the next few months. This institutional strategy will focus how our service will expand and continue to improve to take advantage of all commercial space has to offer. It is focused not just on the U.S. industry, but on improving our approaches with our allies, partners, and industry on the best ways for commercial to provide capability and interoperability. I would like to make a couple of comments about the potential I see to engage with space industry in India, Japan, and Australia, as well as some recent successes we have had. Starting with India, in January of this year, the U.S. and Indian national security advisors led the inaugural meeting of the U.S.-India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology and committed to establish an innovation bridge to connect U.S. and Indian defense startups. Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, was honored to participate in the launch of Indus X during the week of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the White House last month. The India-U.S. Defense Acceleration Ecosystem will expand the strategic technology partnership and defense industrial cooperation between our governments, business communities, and academic institutions. A recent example of this collaboration is the signing of the Space Force's first non-domestic cooperative research and development agreement with two Indian companies, Third Eye Tech and 114 AI, in domain awareness and sensor technologies, which was announced in the President Biden, Prime Minister Modi joint leaders statement. the U.S. Air Force Research Lab's Space Vehicles Directorate looks forward to collaborating with these startups in mutual benefit. The Indian company Pixel was awarded a contract in March with the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office to provide hyperspectral imagery. As Secretary Kendall noted in his remarks at the event, the first non-domestic CRADA for the Space Force will help remove bureaucratic barriers for more cooperation, and it helps us figure out the process. We will get more agreements and move forward. We are committed to making major progress under ISAT and INDUS-X. Shifting to Japan, the Space Force looks forward to growing partnerships with Japanese space industry through JASDF, JAXA, and the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry's Defense Industry Division. In the past, METI has helped the Air Force learn more about the technical strength of Japanese companies, and we are eager to replicate this for the Space Force. In March of this year, the Office of Space Commerce, under the U.S. Department of Commerce, participated in the 8th U.S.-Japan Comprehensive Dialogue on Space. This included representatives from U.S. and Japanese industry, in addition to our governments. We plan to deepen linkages between our respective space industries and look forward to the creation of a space industry network composed of Japanese and U.S. space companies interested in facilitating collaboration, including for space-based maritime domain awareness. And last but not least is Australia. In November of 2022, Astroscale US, a subsidiary of the Japanese parent company Astroscale, signed a cooperative research and development agreement with AFRL. Astroscale was also awarded an orbital prime contract with SpaceWorks. The DoD, including AFRL, has great collaboration with Australian companies in hypersonics and in SDA. The Australian company, Hypersonics Launch Systems, won DoD's Defense Innovation Unit contract under the Hypersonic and High Cadence Airborne Testing Solicitation. Australian companies Sabre Astronautics and Silentium Defense provide regional leadership for the U.S. Space Command's Sprint Advanced Concept Training exercise in providing a global SSA and SDA network. Western Sydney University, in collaboration with AFRL, has mounted neuromorphic sensors computing equipment on the International Space Station to provide unique SDA capabilities. The U.S. company Leo Labs has built out a global LEO SSA SDA network with a radar in Collie, Western Australia, and has a large growing business operation in Sydney. There are also opportunities under this quad where we could explore collaborations. A few examples of these include joint space technology efforts involving SpaceWorks, facilitating reverse industry days, which include companies from India, Japan, and Australia. This enables us to learn more about the capabilities of space industry among our quad partners and allows companies to learn about Space Force acquisition requirements. Academic and startup programming partnerships with universities and accelerators located in all 4 countries. Supply chain resiliency initiatives, including semiconductors, microelectronics, and rare earth minerals. I'm open to more ideas and look forward to hearing from our partners today. Our economies and military benefit from a robust commercial space sector, and the opportunity to collaborate as partners is immense. Our challenge is to learn about our respective commercial sectors' capabilities and institutionalize how we pursue collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General Barrett. I tell you, the summarizing of what's going on today just explains why these types of discussions are so important. So thank you, sir, for those comments. I'd like to turn it over now to Air Vice Marshal Galani, sir, for your comments.
Thank you very much for inviting me over for this panel discussion. I'm indeed honored. And I'll just talk about the Indian space industry, which in the recent past has been witnessing transformative changes. And as far as we are concerned, creating credible deterrence capability to ensure peaceful use of outer space should ideally be carried out through cooperative frameworks. And this is where the initiative by the Quad countries to cooperate in the space segment becomes important. From our point of view, I think the Space Working Group during the last Quad Summit agreed upon the Indo-Pacific Partnership for the Maritime Domain Awareness, the climate change and weather, and space situational awareness. What we would like that India has large and porous borders, imagery for border management, sensitive areas imagery, which is not normally shared. There could be a Quad agreement on this. In the commercial sector, communications has vast potential for cooperation. And I just break it down in different segments. If you look at the launch segment, India's capability presently is restricted to from 2.5 to 5 tons. That is the PSLV. The SSLV is still not matured, but is in the process of maturing. And we can partner with Quad countries for small satellite launch vehicles. Is India startups like the Agnicool and the Skyroot are producing rockets which are less than 500 kgs, and they need a market which India does not have, and the Quad could facilitate this. Rapid launch capability and launch on demand, if the Quad countries agree to it, to do a launch within 72 hours, either from India or Australia. This is another area that we would like to see cooperation on. If you look at the midstream, while India is okay with manufacturing satellites, there isn't an big enough market, and opportunities through the Quad could generate this market. India's startups partnering with foreign investors for capital, that is Agnicool, Bellatrix, etc., and to make the Indian market more competitive. What India has done is waived off taxes for private launch vehicles for their launch services. Import-export duties actually need to be waived off by the Quad countries. Even private companies which are registered under the InSpace, which is the Indian organization, different launch pads for different orbits, whether from India or Australia, could be utilized as a demonstrator or capability without any additional levies. As far as the satellite services are concerned, there is a lot of room and scope for cooperation in the GNSS. There is a huge requirement for having interoperability like Japan has got with the quasi-Zenith satellite system, which hosts SSA payloads for the US. Interoperability with the US GPS exists, but what we are looking at is the Indian regional navigation satellite system and the NAVIC with the GPS and the Galileo. I think General Grant spoke of the example of the recent conflict. The commercial satellite availability during the Ukraine war has actually demonstrated, and we probably need an MOU with private entities within the Quad countries to ensure that this happens in times of a conflict. The Indian subcontinent area is covered by the OneWeb satellite, which with communication and data services. And in any conflict, when the military satellites get jammed, it is the private satellites which would be made available. Uh, if you look at all the Quad countries, there is water all around, and the major point, which was of the maritime domain awareness, the space satellites by each of the countries should have redundancy, and and the area should be monitored with similar technology so that exchange of information is uh, facilitated facilitated between the countries, and the imagery could must range from the SAR to hyperspectral to IR with the highest possible resolution, and the processing facilities should be available in all the locations of the Quad member countries. Uh, in fact, even to destroy missiles from space, very low Earth orbit, VLEO capability should exist, and also early warning of missile launch, that is the infrared capability, which presently exists only with the United States. This information should be shared. Also, we could help by sharing in cyber attacks and attacks by directed energy weapons or lasers, and for India, it would help as long as localization could be done for the purpose of attribution. When we look at collaboration between the Quad countries, we can have international conferences, seminars, or exchange of papers with IPR. Business models differ from country to country, but best practices could be shared, and this is what should be facilitated by the government. We should have a single window of clearance, waiver of taxes, something akin to a free trade agreement in the space segment. India Australia had a grant for satellite services, which actually in which it was mandated that the 80% of the money should be invested in Australia. Whenever we have an agreement, in my opinion, it should be a 50-50 sharing agreement. As far as non-critical technologies are concerned, there should be a free flow of information and assured market within the Quad. The companies from these nations should be given a priority. Uh, India is giving a great push to indigenizations, and there is a tremendous scope or opportunity for investment in India. In we need to identify technologies that can be shared. That is for space situational awareness, space traffic management, on-orbit servicing, etc., and even counter space technologies. In fact, as far as startups are concerned, there should be no restrictions, and all the companies which are registered through InSpace should be allowed to do business. And I would just conclude by saying that we need increased participation through more exchanges, quad level seminars, working groups, exhibitions, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Air Vice Marshal Galani. I appreciate your comments, especially those on the cyberspace and other domains that are constantly relying on space technology for freedom of action in their respective domains. Please introduce Major General Takanashi Hiroaki.
I am from the Japan Air Self-Defense Force. I am Major General Takanashi. It is an honor to be able to participate in this dialogue with representatives from the military of the US, Australia, and India as a guest speaker. It's quite an honor. The security environment in space, if you look at the current situation today in the space domain, there's competition diplomatically in defense, economically in the information domain, and also in the science and technology and innovation areas that support all of this. There is a geostrategic competition, and space is a major venue for this. In the 21st century, many of the conflicts that have occurred have shown that the use of the space domain is directly connected to superiority on the ground. In recent years, we have seen more and more optical and synthetic aperture radar and electromagnetic satellites go over our country. Many more. The risks and threats of the space domain have been pointed out as well. Today, innovation is very quick in the space area in the private sector. Private sector innovation is a major trend now, and civil and commercial satellites can also be used for security purposes. Space systems have become dual use. Thus, cross-cutting, comprehensive competition in the use of space is heating up. Also, geopolitical competition is heating up, and therefore it is important for us to be able to deepen our cooperation with countries that share our values, with like-minded countries and allies. This is indispensable for us. Turning to Japan, the government of Japan has launched a space security initiative. For the stable use of space. In June, this initiative was launched, and the goal was to assure the peace, prosperity, and stability and safety of the people and the country of Japan using the space domain, and along with like-minded countries and allies to assure stable use of space and assure free access to space. We hope that this webinar will contribute further to international cooperation in that area. Turning to the efforts of my ministry, the Ministry of Defense, there are three major directions of the initiatives now underway. First of all, to connect information, and then to capture targets on the ground and HGBs, and then to secure the use of space. This would be based on space domain awareness. Looks good. Now I'll talk about the Air Self-Defense Force and our initiatives. In order to promote the stable use of space, in 2020, we created a space operations squadron specialized in space domain, And last year in March, we launched a space operations group. The unit started out with about 20 members and now has about 120 members. As to the space operations group, it focuses on SSA, space situational awareness. And at the end of 2021, they began operating an SSA system to process, exploit, and disseminate information that had been collected. Using this system, satellite operators have been notified of proximity warnings. And we also provide satellite operators with other information. In the future, we'd like to have satellite interference sensing systems, laser ranging systems, SDA satellites, to roll out progressively these other systems to expand further our space domain specialized units. Also in the space field, cooperation with like-minded countries and allies we see as being indispensable. JAS staff participates in Shriver War Games and Global Sentinel because of the importance of multilateral exercises. And therefore, we're very enthusiastic about participating in them, and we want to increase our international cooperation. Also, we also participate in talks to promote cooperation with various countries. And we are undergoing various initiatives. JASDA is making significant efforts to increase our own capacity in the space domain. Speed and flexibility are necessary. Therefore, the old way of doing things has to be disrupted, and we are adopting various innovative methods. One is to create members that are specialized in space. We recruit broadly. We have interviews and select air self-defense force members and change their old specialty and convert them into being space specialists. This is a new system for us. Thanks to this, for those JASDF members who have been chosen for this space branch, can constitute units that have very high morale. Now about public-private cooperation. As to our activities in the space domain, JASDF believes that various kinds of cooperation are important. This includes cooperation with the private sector, with private sector firms. We are engaged in unprecedented initiatives. It's a provisional name, but we are planning to create a space cooperation center. This is an unprecedented initiative. To wrap up, the security environment is more and more tough and complex, but in the space domain, beginning with the Quad, with allies and like-minded countries that share our values, we believe it is very important to increase our cooperation. In conclusion, the International Security Industry Council of Japan, ISIC, thank you so much for providing me with this valuable opportunity. I hope that your association will develop more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Hiroyuki. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Brigadier Gardner, sir, for comments from you.
Okay, thank you, Bill. But I'm not too sure if I should be thanking you so much, as that it's humbling to be here with such an esteemed panel, and hearing those other panelists speak before me was certainly inspiring. For me, though, it's always difficult to be last, because then all of a sudden you're in that dichotomy of having all of your talking points already covered, which I certainly love. And if I was to use a relay metaphor, often the last runner on the team is referred to as the anchor, but I think in this case it's going to be more of a literal understanding of that term. But I will try to get through this with you. Look, from my perspective, you heard from Bill's introduction of my short bio. My background has definitely not been in space until more recently. In fact, the joint land combat has been the domain in which I've focused more so. But coming into such a domain which is enthusiastic and continuing to develop so rapidly, there's no other place I'd prefer to be. And having the space operations portfolio and linking that through what I've seen, the embryonic but certainly rapid growth of the Defence Space Command here in Australia, it's certainly a privilege to be a part of it. Linked to that, Defence Space Command is new, and it was only in January of last year that it was formally formed. And as a command, it was established to deliver the transformational change needed across the Australian Defence to consolidate space capabilities and operations. Our mission is to prepare space power to secure Australia's interests in peace and war. And almost certainly every defence capability relies on space in some way to perform its role. And to use one example of one space service, more than 89 major Australian defence projects rely on the satellite communications program, and they're all still to be delivered. As a command, Defence Space is structured in 3 branches. We have a strategic plans branch, we have a space capability branch, and you've got space operations, which is where I sit. As a command itself and holistically across those three branches, we try to deliver those effects. And with units and our first joint space unit being established in January of this year, we're taking over space surveillance of in-service capabilities and continue to look forward growth into how that unit will continue to provide space surveillance. We're also intrinsically linked into our Joint Operations Command with the establishment of a space component or environmental command within our Joint Operations Command construct. Within there sits our Space Operations Centre, and together we try to provide what is effectively a generation of capability through an in-service raise, train and sustain of our personnel and capability effect to deliver for operations. To focus these efforts, and this year the Australian Government responded to a broad-ranging strategic review, the Defence Strategic Review, to set the agenda for ambitious reform to Defence's posture and structure. The government has directed that the Defence must have the capacity to defend Australia and our immediate region. We need to be able to deter, through denial, any adversaries' attempts to project power against Australia through the northern approaches. We must protect Australia's economic connection to our region and in the world, and we need to contribute with our partners to the collective security of the Indo-Pacific. Contributing with our partners to the maintenance of the rules-based global order is fundamental. Therefore, as a command, we're leaning into this with urgent implementation. We've already achieved one of those Defence Strategic Review directions already, which was the movement of the Defence Base Command from where we were established within the Royal Australian Air Force into Defence's Joint Capabilities Group with effect of the 1st of July of this year. That, along with other changes that was mandated and directed, has now consolidated domain-like approach within the Joint Capabilities Group so that we have cyber, we have space and informational effects together to ensure that we're considering the direction of those domains. As mentioned, space is both necessary for us and the maintenance of our competitive edge. It's realistically, though, innovation, which is what gives us that edge. When we're looking at space innovations, our first focus is building a space architecture that is resilient across domains, across regions, and of course the orbits. Innovation that will help defend our space architecture, infrastructure, improve our resilience, and enable access to space. We're designing a space architecture that will leverage Australia's space advantages as we contribute to the global efforts. Our second key innovation focus is how we better use the fundamental properties of the space domain to generate space power for that competitive edge in the battle space, with the final innovation focus being about the integration of space power, i.e. how we work with our allies and international partners to optimise space power together. In all of this, our challenge is speed. How do we develop capability fast enough to keep pace with industry and stay ahead of our competitors? With all of our good intent, it will then come down to that fourth dimension of time. That's always been one of the hardest ones to control. To achieve this, our people must and are our most important asset. Our people will be challenged. Our people's knowledge, skills, experience, and talents will grow as together we achieve a more integrated defence force along with our with that Defence Strategic Review announcements. The Australian Government advised it will transform Australia's defence innovation ecosystem to deliver the advanced technologies urgently needed for our national security. 3.4 billion Australian dollars are being invested over the next decade to establish the Advanced Strategic Capabilities Accelerator, or ASCA. The DSR concluded that we need more effective support for innovation, faster acquisition, and industry to deliver the capabilities the Australian Defence Force needs. The Advanced Strategic Capabilities Accelerator will be a key element for defence innovation, science, and the technology programs. The priorities of the programs are hypersonics, directed energy, trusted autonomy, quantum technology, information warfare, and long-range fires. The Accelerator program will focus on defined missions, solving the most relevant technical issues, and taking a more flexible and agile approach to procurement. This will ensure that game-changing ideas are developed into capabilities that give the Australian Defence Force an asymmetric advantage. Australia and our partners like Mines recognise that collaboration is therefore a key element to achieve that competitive advantage. And Defence Space Command's vision is to assure Australian civil and military access to space integrated across government and in concert with our partners, allies, and industry. This aligns directly with government's direction to us. Australia's location in the Southern Hemisphere and our vast open land mass gives us an advantage in the space domain. We can observe and receive signals from space at times when other nations cannot. Between our international partners, we can fill gaps in each other's capabilities. We all realise that space operations are considerably enhanced when conducted cooperatively. We can share data and we can share missions. Our work with our partners isn't only focused on capability outcomes. As a global domain, we'll work closely with like-minded nations to continue to nurture the global recognition of the importance of space and the needs for nations to operate in a responsible manner. Our combined power helps us operate more effectively. Importantly, it's going to be the camaraderie of us as space professionals. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Brigadier Gardner, for those comments and for everybody for sharing the comments today. Excuse me. Let's get into the question and answer portion of today's agenda. So speaking about and summarizing each of your respective capabilities and how you're partnering with commercial, which space mission capability areas do you believe have the most potential for cooperation under the Quad? General Garant, we'll start with you, sir.
Thanks, Bill. The most important, I think, for us and the easiest for entry for any of our partners to include their commercial industries would be space domain awareness, satellite communications, weather, and then space-based surveillance and reconnaissance, or sensing from space. Those are the 4 areas that we're really interested in partnering.
Thank you, sir. And for India, Air Vice Marshal Galani, what are your thoughts on that question?
I think I very much echo what General Garant has said. It is space situational awareness, imagery, maritime domain awareness, communications, and these technologies. And like I also mentioned, we could cooperate on cyber capabilities. I mean, cyber attacks and all, which are increasing in frequency, share information on those issues, and directed energy weapons, lasers, EMP, those kind of technologies and attacks.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And Major General Hiroaki, sir, can you tell us what your current challenges are to leveraging commercial capabilities faster and more effectively?
Recording stopped.
活用の重要性は、多くの人が認識していますが、
Many people do understand the importance of using and harnessing commercial capabilities. Bureaucracy is a hurdle that must be overcome.
Recording in progress.
To realize that energetic key people have to be put in place, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those comments. And what you refer to there is a culture of space professionals that you're building there in Japan, and how critical that is to constant collaboration is a very key point. Brigadier Gardner, sir, over to you from the Australia perspective. Which space mission capability areas do you believe have the most potential for cooperation under Quad?
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with the speakers before me. I think there's so much opportunity in all of the services, but specifically those that have got the ease of access so that we can start to share and collaborate soonest. And I think that what we heard from General Grant certainly highlighted the services from an immediacy perspective that would be very easy to get after. For me, I think that some of the hurdles that you referred to prior was that, from my perspective anyway, would be the sacred cows. So we need to effectively enable the enthusiasm and enable the thinking to progress, as opposed to seeking a policy barrier to cease. A lot of the innovation can come through the commercial sector to support any one of those services, to be frank. What we need to do is be generating the structures and the systems that accept the entities in at the level they can contribute as quickly as they can, to learn from that as much as we will gain from it at the same time.
Thank you, Brigadier Gardner. What you bring up is, I think, critical important to this discussion, and that is, how do we capture innovation very quickly? So from each country's perspective, how are you facilitating greater collaboration between your country and the respective space industries that support development of that critical innovation we know is going to be needed for future space superiority missions? General Grant, we'll start with you, sir.
I'm sorry, Bill, could you ask that again? It broke up a little bit.
Sorry about that, sir. How can Quad partners facilitate greater collaboration between their respective space industries to capture that innovation?
Got it.
And what are you
Thanks.
doing? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Bill. I'd like to highlight an activity that we're doing. We call these reverse industry days. And that's a typical industry day is industry will come to a forum and we'll talk about our needs and requirements. But when we do a reverse industry day, industry and our partners come to us and tell us what they're working on, what their capabilities are. And it's a great chance for us to learn about something perhaps we don't know about. And in fact, we have at the end of October, a international reverse industry day planned with our partner nations and their industry partners. So I think giving forums like that to allow partner industries to come talk to us and tell us what they're working on is a great opportunity. The other thing that the Space Force does is our partnerships aren't just with allies, but also with academic organizations and with startups. So academic partnership programs, other universities, and that doesn't just have to be a United States university. And then finally, our accelerator programs like SpaceWorks in concert with Air Force Research Lab are opportunities to collaborate with these partnered space industries. Over.
Great, thank you, sir. Air Vice Marshal Galani, how is India accomplishing those types of processes to ensure that you capture that innovation from the commercial sector?
Yeah, so what the Indian government has done is it's launched a mission defense space with 75 space challenges, because we are in the 75th year of our independence, which are actually aimed at encouraging the indigenous design, development, and manufacturing of defense equipment, in which private industries, including startups and MSMEs, are eligible to apply for these challenges, which have been divided into various categories. And when you look at the Quad nations, I think something similar, if we collaborate on this kind of a setup amongst the Quad countries, it will go a long way in ensuring free space, open, inclusive, and secure use of space. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And turning to Major General Hiroaki, sir, how is Japan fostering that innovation that we know we need in the space domain?
日本では、安全保障政策、
In
宇宙
Japan, we have a space security policy.
最近大きく強化の方向に
And very recently, we changed direction and it was very much strengthened. And it puts emphasis on strengthening industry as well. Initiatives along those areas are being strengthened. JASDAF is also participating in exchanges of views with private industry and trying to promote cooperation and considering the establishment of a center for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Establishment of a center for cooperation sounds phenomenal. Brigadier Gardner, how is Australia facing the challenge of capturing the innovation needed?
Yeah, also, how are we doing it? Probably not as well as we should, to answer that part, but how could we be doing it is more by a design, deliberately by design. And by that, I'm referring to integrated concepts by design. So if we think about what those words could mean, effectively what I'm referring to is a lot of people have been quite commonly speaking about an allied by design or a partnered by design construct. An integrated by design construct takes that similar idea, but expands it through by recognizing it's not just the like minds and military to military links, but it's now bringing in the partnered, yes, but more so how you define partnered as either civil, academia, or commercial. And I think without a deliberate attempt to design your organization that incorporates the integration, you're always going to potentially struggle to incorporate or achieve the full potential. So my simple answer is you integrate it by design.
Thank you, sir. For the panel, how can the Quad partners better share information about the talents of space startup companies which are located in their respective countries? General Grant, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Bill. As I had mentioned, our primary acquisition organization, the Space Systems Command out in Los Angeles Air Force Base, has stood up a commercial space office here in Northern Virginia, and they have something called the Front Door, which is the entry point for all industry partners seeking to do business with the Space Force. And it doesn't mean that you're only going to be working with the Space Systems Command. You might get referred to the Space Development Agency. You might get referred to the Space Rapid Capabilities Office, but it's a one-stop shop of who to speak with and have an opportunity to talk to government officials about your capabilities, your company, and opportunities to partner. And then I had also mentioned with AFRL, the SpaceWorks. So those would be my two recommendations.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Very deliberate way for companies to get involved in this sector, for sure. Sir, Air Vice Marshal Galani, over to you, sir. How is India capturing and sharing information about startups?
I think InSpace is the organization which has been set up by India, in which all these startups and the companies which are operating in the space segment are registered. And like I mentioned earlier in my talk, I think the governments of the Quad nations could facilitate a meeting of all the startups by holding, seminars or exhibition or discussions. This would be a great way or a great platform for the space startups amongst all the four countries to meet each other and to see what technologies are there and to be able to decide as to which niche technology each country takes, so that there is no duplication involved, and then we can work collaboratively on our requirements, collective requirements for peaceful use of space.
Thank you, sir. And Major General Hiroaki, sir, the question to you: how can Quad partners better share information about the talents of space startups?
はい、
Thank you.
航空幕僚監部エアスタッフオフ
The
ィ
Air
ス
Staff Office, where I work,
を担当する
has an office responsible for
ております。
innovation.
そこは普段から民間のスタートアップ
And on a daily basis, they look at startups in the private sector. They cooperate with the universities, with academia.
そのような活動を促進する可能性があると
I believe that there is room for the Quad to do something similar, and that we should keep that in mind as a possibility.
Thank you, sir. And Brigadier Gardner, over to you, sir.
It always comes down to communication. And I think that in this case, webinars like this and other forums are always going to be the critical focus area to ensure that the advertising of where these startups are and how they're progressing is going to be key. But it's not always going to fall on us as the military representatives. It's going to need a strong civil sector with their representation for the commercial to speak to, and thereby linking the commercial sectors of all of our countries again. Yes, the military to military linkages, the civil to civil military linkages, but at the end of the day, it's going to always rely on the communication, and in that case, relationships matter.
A question from the audience. There is a question about space domain awareness. How has each country been successful in leveraging commercial entities for space domain awareness? And what are your current challenges to leveraging commercial capabilities faster and more effectively? General Grant, we'll start with you, sir.
Okay. We have an organization. It's a collaboration between an operational unit at Space Command as well as the team that does space domain awareness out at Space Systems Command. It's a joint commercial office, and commercial providers are on contract and provide commercial SDA data to Space Command, and companies can come and go from that contract. It's designed to be very flexible and short contracts and low dollar to make the barrier to entry pretty easy. As companies provide that data and prove their capabilities, they're able to provide that data directly to the warfighter. What's interesting about it is that's not going into the space catalog that the United States creates. A challenge to commercial space domain awareness data would be the validity and verification of those non-traditional sensors. But the upside to that is it gives us opportunities to test that type of data, large data sets, evaluate the merits of the data, and establish new norms of how we incorporate and use operationally commercial data that doesn't come from our traditional sensors. Over.
Thank you, sir. Yes, that commercial integration cell at the Combined Space Operations Center is just one of many examples of sharing space domain awareness data. And with respect to data aggregation, the unified data library that's being used by multiple organizations to ensure that that data is fostered so that we can use it is another example. So thank you, sir, for those comments. Air Vice Marshal Galani, over to you, sir.
I think presently there is no commercial entity in India, space startup, which is into the SSA segment. Whatever is there available is with the public sector, which is with the government through the Indian Space Research Organization. But this is an area where I think without collaboration, we cannot work, because you need these centers across the world, you need information, and unless there is information sharing between the countries, and this is where the Quad setup becomes important in sharing information on the space situational awareness. But the day is not far when you will have commercial entities in India which are also working on the STA as of now presently.
Thank you, sir. General Hiroaki, from Japan's perspective, how are you handling space domain awareness mission set specifically, and what are some challenges?
The
Air Self-Defense Force, with respect to SDA and our systems, we're from the design stage by design are integrating commercial data. So already Japanese private industry and US private industry, with respect to SDA, this information is purchased and integrated. From Japan's perspective, this is not just useful to build effective capability, it also increases the resilience of systems as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Brigadier Gardner.
Yeah, thank you. I'd absolutely echo General Grant's comments about the JCO, and then bring back some of his introductory comments about the Sprint Advanced Concept Training, which is effectively an exercise to process some of the commercial entity data into a not classified environment. The advantage of doing that is that it enables a learning from both sides. So from a military perspective, we get to see some of the benefit of non-traditional commercial sensors and the data. Similarly, how that data is then transferred into the SAC-T enables the company commercial to learn utility on how we would use it and or what might need to be improved or could be developed further. So it truly is a great environment for both military and commercial to come together in an exercise, like I said, in a not classified environment, to both develop our understanding of space domain awareness together. So I'd just like to echo those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Gardner. It's interesting you bring up the Sprint Advanced Concept Training exercise hosted by U.S. Space Command at Colorado Springs to provide an unclassified opportunity to engage and figure out some of the best practices. So we've been talking about technology, cooperation, collaboration today, and all of that culminates at an exercise event such as the SAC-T event. And so we're honored to have provided an interview with SAC-T members in the past, and we're happy to connect partner nations with those individuals who run that event. So thank you for that, sir. I know we're coming up on our time, so I'd like to provide each panelist an opportunity to provide some closing comments. General Grant, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Colonel Wolf, and thank you and the Space Force Association for hosting this outstanding event. This is exactly what we need to be doing. I've heard from my fellow panelists, each of them talked about allied by design, partnering, leveraging commercial strategies. The benefits are immeasurable, from entanglement and complicating the adversary's calculus to saving money for each of our nations, to developing greater resiliency through this effort. So very important to us, very sincere effort, and my heartfelt thanks to our partners and again to the association. Over.
Thank you, General Grant. Appreciate that. Air Vice Marshal Galani, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Wilf, and thank you to the ISIC for hosting this event. I think it is extremely important, and as we have seen during the discussion today, that there is a tremendous scope for cooperation amongst the Quad nations on a range of issues, from SSA, STM, and technology, startups, commercial sector. And I think the commercial sector, which has been unleashed, has to be tapped to the advantage of collective advantage of all the Quad nations. And I think this is a wonderful forum. May we have more such seminars or meetings in person in the future. Thank you very much for getting me on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Major General Hiroaki, sir, over to you.
はい、皆様のお言葉に、同意いたします。非常に、
I very much
フォーラムを開催していただき、
agree
ありがとうございます。
with what you have said. Thank you so much for organizing this wonderful forum. The Quad, public-private partnerships, multi-layered cooperation in space equates to deterrence and maintaining the peace. We believe it's very effective and important, and very much look forward to continuing our cooperation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Brigadier Gardner, over to you for closing comments.
Thank you. Cheers, Bill. And look, I think that there's absolutely an illumination globally about the rate of change and how space is so important in relation to that, not just for the military, but across all of our global economies. In relation to that, I think, and will always continue to be a willing participant in these sort of events, because I fully am cognizant that I learn more than I could ever contribute. And because I'm continuing to learn, I'll always be available. So thank you for the team for pulling together, and it's been an absolute privilege to be with such esteemed gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our co-hosts, the ISIC Japan team, and to our sponsors, ANSYS, BAE Systems, and ST Engineering for allowing this event to happen. We look forward to hosting many more events like this in the future. This is just the first of the Commanding Heights series. So look for more information as we develop out the program. And I'd like to personally invite each of you to the inaugural Space Force Association Space Power Conference to be held in December in Orlando, Florida. So we can continue this dialogue there, besides the many different events that we have scheduled throughout the year. So thanks to everyone for their time today. We know the space economy is working to become a $1 trillion economy by 2030. And our allies and like-minded nations need to be at the forefront of ensuring that that economy can continue to grow. And that happens because of freedom of action in the space domain provided by each of your respective countries. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and we look forward to future opportunities to collaborate and converse.
Space is the commanding height. The expanse beyond borders, essential for deterrence and defense. Superiority is critical. Expanding the network of allied nations is key. We are partnering to win. Strengthening relationships with allies and partners is crucial to maintaining a secure, safe, and sustainable space environment. The four nations of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, the Quad, is focusing on sharing information that brings situational awareness, mutual support, and technological innovation to the space enterprise. Thank you for joining us. This is the beginning of a series on Allied space called Commanding Heights. The next event is coming soon. Discussions will continue in multiple languages. Help build the community. Join us at alliednation.org.